Hello, and welcome to Rocket Fuel, your daily update of everything that's happening in the Rocket Pool community. My name is Wack, today is July 26th, and today's episode is going to cover a whole bunch of news about vote initialization, vote power stuff. We're going to be talking about potential tokenomics changes before Saturn. That's very interesting, and we're also going to be talking about turning on the fee switch and what that means. So let's get started.
10, 9, ignition sequence start, 6.
So we're going to begin today's episode here with a post from Langers that came out earlier today UK time, and he says, "Hey everyone, quick update on the PDAO vote initialization. Currently we have 575 nodes out of 3,722 who have initialized their vote, and the initialized vote power is 35,850. The comma is in the wrong place, Langers there, which is 37.62% of vote power. So he says we're getting there, which is really good. We really want to be at that 50% vote power, which is what he says. He says we would ideally like to reach 50% of our vote power initialized, but we may have to review our target depending on how we progress in the next week. We think we have to wait for smart contract hotfix to be able to turn on the on-chain voting, but we'll be switching Snapshot over to the new delegate system when we have enough vote power." He says, "A reminder, this is the guide to initialize your vote power," and then there's a link there. He says, "I've escalated this announcement to make sure we get as many people initialized as possible before important votes are raised." He says, "Over the last few months, there's been a lot of discussion, analysis, engagement, Rocket Fuel shows, governance posts, and furious spec writing on the future Rocket Pool codenamed Saturn." He says, "You will not want to miss out on defining the future of the protocol, so please initialize your vote power before things start going to vote." He said, "If you want to catch up on the Saturn discussion work, here are some links." And he says, there's like the tokenomics links from Val and Samus, and also from their sentiment poll, and then there's 1KX and Evan's proposals, and then there's the Rocket Fuel episode with Val and Samus that I recorded, which was the Q&A, and then also the Rocket Fuel with Evan and Samus, where Evan talked about his proposal. And sadly, there isn't a Rocket Fuel episode with Mike from 1KX, but so be it. Anyway, with that said, people have started moving their votes around because some of the community members have too much of voting power. Myself, I am one of those people. So here, Bossy was one of those people. He says that he updated his delegate to Jasper instead of doing it himself. And Hululo said to shout out Jasper on Rocket Fuel and tell people how to switch to get his vote a little bit higher. So let's have a look at what the voting looks like right now. And I kind of wrote a little statement saying that if my vote is above 2,000, then please don't delegate any more to me. Right now I'm at 2,209. Next after that is Patches with 2,034. So I think for the two of us, like, no one should delegate to us anymore, really, from this point going forwards. We have Val then on 1,539, and after that we have Ken with 1,135, 1KX with 1,117, we have Invis with 1,078, Nosho with 1,044, Thomas has 975, and Ramana has 964. So, you can have a look at this page, it's in the links below, to see, which person has how many votes and which delegates are getting votes. So you can keep that in mind. If you haven't, Jasper's at 371 already, which is actually pretty respectable. Good job, Jasper. And Bossy's making up 96 of those votes. So that's really cool for Jasper. But I think if you are, if you're still waiting to initialize your vote, like Langer said, you want to make sure that, once there's voting happening on Saturn stuff, which might be soon, then you really want to be in a position where you can make your voice heard and make your voice count. So please initialize your vote before that happens. And with if you want to delegate, you can of course vote for yourself. Like, you don't have to delegate to anyone if you don't want to. But if you do want to delegate, then remember that you rather want to go for those smaller node operators rather than the bigger node operators, because they're really great community members, and it's better to have it spread out a little bit. So yeah, definitely do that, please. And then there's always test proposals going on recently to kind of see how things are going and how voting is going. So there's currently a test proposal here, which is from July 26th, and this is just option A and option B. And option A, so option 1, sorry, and option 2. And option 1 is winning with 4,200 votes, and option 2 is losing with 4,100 votes. And I had initially voted for option 1, but then I changed my vote because Blue Mage said that there was pizza for people who voted for option 1. So I changed it, so I'm expecting some pizza from Blue Mage here. But I made a little comment saying, I'm changing my vote because Blue Mage said he'll get me pizza. Well, he just said general pizza. He didn't actually promise me specifically, but let's, let's skirt around that topic a little bit. I said I'm very easily bribable. I'm not actually easily bribable, so please don't worry if you have delegated your votes to me. That was just a little joke. But yeah, this is getting really exciting now. So I'm actually really looking forward to seeing how all this will go, and I think we're going to get to a really good place like within the next week or two, and then we'll be ready to vote on the RPIP 49 snapshot, which is really exciting. Okay, next we have some discussion about what we can do before Saturn. So, in the worst case scenario, Saturn is a year away, and that of course is not good. It will leave Rocket Pool kind of dead in the water with Lido CSM coming out towards the final quarter of this year. They're aiming for October, November time launch, and if Rocket Pool is not going to be ready for another 6-8 months after that, that's not going to be good at all. So Halululo here said, I really think reducing RPL requirement is going to be a good stopgap once we finally voted on this thing. So the idea that Halululo here has is that the community needs to start talking about this now, and what we could do is we could potentially change the RPL bond requirements and make it down to 0 probably, and it's because it's just a parameter change. And I think that's also the case with activating LEB4s, but I'm not as sure about that. But there was this discussion, they were going back and forth. It was really, really interesting that the idea is like, you could potentially go down to 0%, but also reduce commission. And then there was also talk about giving rewards to people below 10%, and then that would stop people from exiting their validators to get back above 10%. And then there was a really good conversation. There was Nosho involved and a whole bunch of other people kind of like talking it out. But he says, I think we could potentially get a lot of node operators that would only join after Saturn. We'd get them earlier if we just got rid of the RPL requirement now. So I don't think there'd be a fee switch necessarily activated with this. There wouldn't be anything like that. But what would happen is, we would allow node operator growth again, because anyone who's waiting for Saturn to get in, they could just get in a lot sooner. So there's some really interesting dynamics here. But people are starting to talk about it. And then, Nosho was saying, when is the CSM launch? Halulu said October, which means that, if we want to do this, we'd have to move fast. So Halulu, I know that you watch Rocket Fuel. Maybe it's time to talk to some people in governance maybe, and then write a forum post kind of explaining your ideas, because we really would want this, I guess, to happen concurrently with the RPIP 49 vote. The idea is, the RPIP 49 vote would go really well, but this would be kind of like waiting in the wings to go to vote pretty much right after the RPIP 49 vote happens, because then people will know that this is what's happening next for Rocket Pool, but we would be pulling that a lot further forward, which I think which is really good. So this is what Halulu says. He says, this is why I'd want to do it before that. They can get in without RPL and then just move to mega pools with Saturn instead of going with CSM. We wouldn't be competitive in terms of APY yet, but at least we'd have ETH only staking with Rocket Pool as an option, with the upgrade to be competitive in the near future. So that actually got Ramana was agreeing with that, and it seems like Yoakum here had some ideas about how they would you would get there might be possible to change things in the rewards tree calculations to change rewards around a little bit. But I asked Halulu, I said, what kind of rewards would those people coming in with just ETH validators, what would they get? And he said they would get 7.5% commission, which would still be 122% of solo staking, for example. So 22% more than solo staking rewards, which is nice. Of course, it'll get a lot more competitive in the future, but I want to read more about this idea. I think that I really want to see how it's going to impact Rocket Pool and RPL as well. But it's something that I'm tentatively supportive of. But I definitely want to learn more about this before I start championing this idea. But there's this idea that Lido CSM is coming way before we think it is, or we wanted it to come, and that means we need to act. And let's see if we can act in a way that will make Rocket Pool as successful as possible, while keeping in mind all those other things that could happen as well. Okay, next we're moving on to this tweet thread from Kane, and this is talking about EIP 4788, and this of course was the EIP that lets you communicate between the consensus and execution layers on the beacon chain. And Kane has this thread basically saying that EIP 4788 is an incredibly useful addition that gives EVM access to data on the beacon chain. However, there is one glaring issue with it that needs to be resolved, and this is about EIP 7688. So he says, being able to prove values from beacon chain opens a range of possibilities. For Rocket Pool, it would enable us to remove a number of processes that previously required trusted Oracle to perform, such as the mini-pool scrub check. This is a massive win for decentralization. On top of that, it was allowed to vastly improve gas efficiency, blah, blah, blah. And he says, but on its own, it's not perfect. Proofs are specific to certain layout of the beacon chain, and that layout has been known to change with hard forks of the protocol. I highlighted this as a concern in 2022 when 4788 was still in draft form, and there's a link to the Magicians Forum. He says, although we can remove certain trusted processes in the protocol, the ability to update the proof verifier to support future hard forks is still required. This undermines the usefulness of 4788 because a trusted party still ultimately holds the power to break that process. He says, of course, we design around this for now by requiring delays in upgrades and the usual compromises, but if Rocket Pool were to ever want to remove this ability to upgrade itself and ossify, the instability of the beacon state would prevent this from being possible. So then he says this will be fixed by EIP 7688. This improvement proposal aims to transition the beacon state object to a stable format, which would mean proof verification logic will always remain valid for future hard forks. He says this proposal is immensely desirable not only for Rocket Pool, but also for any decentralized protocols wanting to access beacon state data without stable proofs. Protocols will always have to support some form of upgrade mechanism and cannot aspire to immutability. So that's a really interesting post, and you can go and read the information from the ETH Nimbus people as well, and figure out how it's all going to go. But thank you, Kane, for sharing that. Okay, next we are moving on to some Ethereum news here that kind of impacts Rocket Pool, but this is a new forum post from Aave, and Mark Zeller wrote this about a new Tokenomics update. You can read the forum post, I'll link it for you, but there's also a tweet thread that we'll have a look at. So Mark says that leveraging the introduction of Umbrella, it's time to upgrade the Aave role in the ecosystem. Let's explore this together. So basically what he's saying is that the protocol coverage is a paradigm shift with the adoption of Umbrella. The seize and sell doctrine, hurtful for peg, value inefficient, is replaced by seize and burn doctrine using Go and A tokens for up to billions of coverage and at controlled cost. So basically what they're doing is they're setting up a form of fee switch for Aave, and a whole lot of people got excited about this, and the price of Aave went up considerably. Like as you can see, like before this post was released, it was down at $85, and it had a big 15-20% pump basically up to $103, and now it's at $99.28. So this is not the highest price we've seen for the Aave token recently, but like just a few months ago it was $115. But what's happened here is that there's a lot of positive sentiment that's come into the market. Now the question you might ask is, why didn't Rocket Pool get RPL token get a pump like this with the sentiment poll doing so strongly? The sentiment poll, of course, makes it that the community is more likely to vote for the fee switch for the RPL token, and I guess we haven't gone to vote yet, and the Saturn upgrade hasn't become official yet in terms of the Val and Sam's proposal, but this is the path that it's going towards. I guess the difference is that Aave's token in the past was a governance only token, and now it's getting a utility added to it, whereas RPL has been a utility token. Sure, you've been paid out in RPL inflation, which is kind of sketchy for some people, but not getting ETH rewards necessarily. But what's happening now is the Aave doing this, and it looks like others might start doing this too. So this is a very interesting discussion that people in the Rocket Pool forum have been talking about, and trying to think about how it's going to work out. But if this is something that you're interested in, get involved in the discussion. I think there's still some legal questions and issues that might need to be answered, but overall this is actually like very interesting that this is happening. And then there's this tweet thread from Fiscantes saying, talking about different kinds of tokens and like their fee switches, and he says there's surprisingly few really undervalued crypto projects, at least from a PE perspective, that would be appealing to liquid funds. So he says they could be divided into several groups. One is a really low cap, long time existing and kind of forgotten, and then mention them out of curiosity basically. And then this category is dead or dying projects with no liquidity with some residual activity. Then there's projects with some good P/E ratios driven by the current market and low probability of sustainable earnings. So these are things like Aerodrome, Velodrome, Convex, GMX, and Aura. And then the person gives the third category saying mid caps, blue chips with good chance of sustainable revenue, and that includes things like Aave, Lido, Maker. It says if this is really investable, this is the only really investable category, and it has 3 projects in theory, 4 if Uni turns on the fee switch, but that's tricky as Uniswap will become less competitive if they do. And then I replied by saying that I think Rocket Pool's RPL belongs in category 3. The community is actively working on switching on the fee switch and reducing inflation by 70% is a very exciting time in the protocol. So yeah, I think when people start looking at tokens with a fee switch and what values they can capture and what values they can give to token holders, very soon we're going to start seeing RPL mentioned in the same breath basically as the Aaves, the Makers, and the Lidos of the world, and the Unis as well. And hopefully we'll be actually giving a good amount of tokens back, whether that will be through buy and LP, whether that will be through the burn, or whether that'll be just a greater voter share basically for people who stake with RPL. But on that note, I'm going to end today's episode. So thank you all for watching, listening, and being part of the Rocket Fuel community. I hope you all have a lovely weekend ahead, and I will see you soon. Bye.